And we're going to go live. I'm going to see if it's good. And now we are live on the 4th episode of the Grumbling Dwarf. We have the mighty Gobble Slayer in. Gobble Slayer, how you doing?
Hi everybody, I'm Gobble Slayer. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is a pleasure to have you. I know we've tried to get together on multiple occasions, and finally we've been able to. I'm just going to get the background going here so we can have something for everyone to watch while we talk. And
what are you putting on today for us?
Actually, I have just a dwarf game versus the Dark Elves. I had one of your games, but I was looking for some of your games. I have about 50 replays, but it's one of Shetland Patchy's games, so we'll just let it go in the background as we go over the Grumbling Dwarf. So, the Grumbling Dwarf, our introduction questions. I have to ask everyone, Gobble Slayer, I'll start with, how long have you been grumbling? What was the first lore, story, or game that got you interested?
Not even if I'm grumbling, but how long? I think it's actually an accurate question because I have been grumbling since I first started playing dwarves and encountered a faction that just drove me up the wall. So I mean, it's definitely true that I have been grumbling on the dwarves for a long time.
So what was the first lore that got you into the dwarves? The lore, story, or game that got you interested in dwarves? Was it Warhammer, or do you have other lore that got you curious?
First off, I just want to say that you might hear a little bit of background noise from me, but I'm here. It just might get a little noisy a little bit. As far as the lore, I never knew anything about Warhammer fantasy lore until I started playing Warhammer 1. I was always a big 40k person.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I still don't know a whole lot about the lore other than kind of exploring little tidbits of this or that. I haven't read any fantasy books or anything. I've read a lot of 40k books.
Uh-huh.
I stopped eventually, but I had read the entirety of the Horus Heresy series up until which one was the last one I read? They started getting more into stuff on Terra when I think I stopped reading.
Well, that's really interesting because most people kind of go from fantasy to 40k, and you've gone actually backwards from 40k to fantasy.
Yeah, I don't. It just happened, kind of happenstance around that.
Well, cool. So, what would you say is your favorite Dowie unit in Total War Warhammer?
Oh man, I've thought about this hard when you ask other people. And for me, it always comes back to the Dragonback Slayers.
Oh, they are on screen right now, my friend.
They're just such an amazing killing squad in the game, and they'll beat even units that they're really not meant to beat. They still tend to do pretty well in that engagement.
And they have some pretty amazing animations, to be truthful. Like, all of them have it, but I mean, like, watching them do that, my favorite is the flying headbutt. I think that's my favorite animation to watch. Okay, so...
Yeah, even when one goes down, they're doing their axe attack with their heads chopped off.
I know it.
That last attack. Yeah.
I love it. So, what would you say, what faction do you hate the most?
When I first started playing, I hated fighting vampire counts the most.
Mm-hmm.
Which has changed a lot because now I consider it one of the easiest matchups for the dwarves, but it took me a long time to get good at it. So nowadays, the dark elves are the ones that I have struggled the most with.
Well, that is pure happenstance that I have a dark elf game playing in the background, so that's really, really good. So, what unit specifically would you personally like to launch from a grudge thrower if you had the chance?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
There's lots. I know there's lots.
Yeah, man. Jeez. Man, I wish I had more time to think about that. If it's just going off of like the Dark Elf roster, definitely Sisters of Slaughter.
Oh, that's a good one. That is actually a good one. Sisters of Slaughter are a very, very solid unit. Okay, so which factions do you enjoy beating the most as a Dowie? I would assume Dark Elves are up there, but sometimes it's not. I mean, I know sometimes the faction that I hate the most isn't the one that I enjoy beating the most. How about for you?
Yeah, I think for me, because it's almost a nostalgia thing, I always enjoy beating vampire counts the most.
Was it like I like exactly like I know that's that's funny is like there's some factions that just are very satisfying to beat. Okay, so which faction gives you the most trouble? We talked about that. That is the
The
Dark
dark elves.
Elves. So last question: what has you grumbling today?
Oh, my back, unfortunately, has been this last week, so this had me grumbling a bit.
Always something to grumble about. Always something to grumble.
Yeah,
So
I feel like a grumbling and a long beard right now with my back and everything.
So let's get into the topic we talked about going over, which I think is a absolutely fantastic topic and very apropos for the patch is Gotrek and Felix. Now, I'll let you sort of take it away as to where you see them and how you've played them. I know you've played them a little bit in tournament, but you've also played them in scrimmages and stuff like that. Could you give me a little bit of a feel for Gotrek and Felix as how they play for the dwarfs, and then maybe Empire and Bretonia, and sort of where you see them right now?
Yeah, I think that we're at an interesting point right now because there haven't been any major shakeups in the meta yet in terms of Gotrek and Felix and their impact on the dwarves.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because we just haven't had enough time yet, I feel. But I think that there are some very strong. The winds of magic are blowing in a different direction now, but we haven't quite fully realized it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Because Gotrek and Felix and I think this is something that I've just discovered recently since they came out, which is that originally I was very excited about the idea of having Gotrek because I really wanted to have a Slayer hero in the game
Yeah.
before they were announced because I really like running kind of like I really liked running Ungrim,
Mm-hmm.
but he took away my ability to use my rune magic and other things
Right.
like that. And so I was like, wow, if I just had a Slayer hero, I feel like I could make a lot. I could make some more interesting armies and things. So now that we have Gotrek and Felix, they make for actually an even stronger combined force, which is the hero trio, as I'm calling it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't have to be Gotrek. It could be like in the case of the Skaven. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's actually better to run a Ghost Lord if you can get away with it,
Mm-hmm.
because a Ghost Lord causes terror, which can be incredibly powerful against Skaven. But most of the time, Gotrek and Felix are still the most powerful combo. I'm sure you've seen some videos out there.
Well,
Videos viewers probably have too. Gotrek just like getting like 200 kills in a game almost
he's
on his
getting the
thing.
kills, and I just want to just interject real quickly. Is here is I think I'm with you. Like no, I haven't played in multiplayer, but in campaign, Felix is an absolute unit because he takes those tanky dwarf units and heals them up, and I can see exactly the combination you're talking about. Felix with a Ghost Lord with a Rune Lord. Oh my god.
Yeah,
Keep going. I just wanted to like I'm getting goosebumps thinking about combinations here now that you've said that.
yeah. Against factions that don't have a lot of magic damage or like single entity magic damage, or if they have magic damage, but maybe they don't usually bring that against the dwarves. You know, because again, the magic dwarves are a very magic resistant faction, and even the units that if you do bring magic attacks against dwarves, usually it's an AOE spell. It's like Amber Spear,
Sure.
or I'm trying to think of another example. Debuff spells, not usually damage spells.
Right.
Things that are good against killing, like
Or
ghost dwarves or
summons and
Felix.
stuff like that. Like a lot of people will bring
Yeah,
summons and or they'll bring straight up healing or stuff like a lot of people bring damage. Like even though a lot of factions have death magic, you just do not see Spirit Leech brought against the dwarves very often.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and same thing goes for a lot of different factions. And certain factions, like the High Elves, just don't even have like a single entity magic attack unless they bring Arcane Art Forging. But Arcane Art Forging is not going to do anything against Gotrek. It would only be useful against a Ghost Dwarf. So, like, there's so many good Lord and hero combos right now using Felix, and then depending on the Lord you pick or Gotrek or a Ghost Lord. The problem with bringing Ghost Lord is that you kind of have to announce yourself in a competitive setting by picking Clan Anger.
Exactly.
But you can mind game that with people and just not pick it. Then somebody brings a bunch of magic units and you're like, oh, that fooled you. I don't have any.
Exactly. Have you been able to get any scrims in with a Ghost Lord and Felix?
Yeah, pretty scary. Spoopy and scary to say the least. Um, but again, I think that the Ghost Lord it's a little iffy because it can be hard countered by certain Lords of Magic,
Sure.
and certain units that do a lot of magic attack. But if you force your opponent to bring a lot of those things, sometimes they will. It will take away some other strengths of their army, and you can kind of exploit that. Because the Ghost Lord and Felix are a very strong combo, like really strong on their own. If you don't bring counters, they're really strong.
Mm-hmm. You know, and I've actually just seen a few games too where the Dwarf Hero trio with Felix. I saw a game against the Beastmen, and the Dwarf army was gone, but the three heroes were just tanked the rest of the game. It was crazy.
Yeah, not Attack Taco, Flying Taco, a teammate of mine who's a prolific Beastman player. He has voiced his concerns about fighting Gotrek and Felix and a Lord hero as Beastman because you don't really have any good. You just don't have a lot to get through them. Bestigors are pretty good at killing the heroes, but their stats are kind of low, and they'll take a lot of damage from it. A hero stack, unless the hero stack's getting disturbed, like if you don't have some units in there that are knocking the units around, the hero stack will trash elite infantry squads.
Yeah. Well,
it's kind of surprising, but like they start doing so much damage, and like as long as you keep those units close together, that's the strength.
Yeah. So Wyvern says this all the time about Dwarf heroes is hard to kill, easy to ignore. And I think people are pretty used to ignoring Dwarf hero package until the very end of the game. But now it's sort of at the very end of the game, you get Felix in there, Gotrek, and a Lord of either a Rune Lord or anything like that. You can tank out a massive amount of damage, and it's hard to finish the Dowie off at that point.
Yeah, and especially if the rest of the Dowie army is used correctly, they will have diminished most of the enemy army, and then you still have to fight those three heroes at the end of the game, which is very difficult if you don't have enough troops left. And there are a lot of Dwarf units that are really sticky and tough and can survive into the late game. And if you have the heroes fighting, like if they're back to back with Longbeards, those Longbeards aren't going to break unless they take a lot of damage and get like rear charged. But they won't terror out because they're immune to psychology.
Mm-hmm. Well, have you had a chance to play them much with Empire and Bretonnia? And if so, how different do they feel in those armies compared to a Dowie army?
Only as I haven't played much Empire except in campaigns since the patch.
Mm-hmm.
Empire already had a tremendous amount of options for dealing with all kinds of threats, so they didn't need this option as much.
Right.
But I think it can be a strong option for the Empire. I think I'm not.
You mean Bretonnia? Bretonnia.
Oh,
it can be. Yeah, no, yeah, no. Go ahead.
Yeah, because they can be brought by Empire and Bretonnia.
Yes.
But I think Dwarf Plays showed a good example in the recent Everchosen of how Gotrek on Bretonnia can be very strong against High Elves.
Mm-hmm.
Where he was able to do massive damage to Star Dragons, which are normally the biggest problem when you're fighting High Elves, is the dragons and healing. But he's having Gotrek there, Gotrek can fight off that dragon and deal massive amounts of damage, and getting healed all game, not by Felix, because you don't even need Felix, you have healing magic. So you can just heal Gotrek up all game, and he's a massive.
Oh, geez, I never even thought about that.
Yeah, same thing with Empire. They have healing magic, so they can just heal Gotrek. You don't need Felix. Gotrek on his own is extremely powerful. So I think that, if you somehow got into a late game situation where you had like, Luan or Karl Franz and Gotrek and a healing caster,
oh my god,
it'd be scary. And people, I think give it more time, and we'll see if it's strong enough, or not. Because it might even be stronger than other factions in the Dowie. I think that it just gives the Dowie a more option. The problem I see, or rather I should say the limitation with Gotrek and Felix going to the Dowie right now, is that it still doesn't help them beat the Dark Elves.
Yes. Agreed.
Because the Dark Elves still have AP missiles, and they can just shoot your heroes to death extremely fast.
Well, and
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 they have
their
soul
AP,
stealer.
yes, and their AP infantry is like executioners and sisters of
Hmm.
slaughter, and I mean, or they're not AP, but their infantry can mow through infantry.
Yep.
They're difficult to
Sis-
deal with.
yeah, Sisters and Harganeth do very well against Gotrek and Felix.
Yeah, and you often see
And
Malekith on a chariot, and there's lots of options. Sure.
yeah, yeah. So again, it's kind of a thing where it's given the dwarves in their matchups that were already pretty even or favored. I think it gives them more options, or makes it easier for them. But against like their hard counters, it doesn't. I do think it helps a lot against the high elves though, which is interesting. So high elves have always been a tough matchup. But with with your noble chariots and your Star of Avalon and all that.
It's a little bit more manageable against the high elves. And I think you've been seeing the high elf game has closed up a lot. I don't know if it's dead even right now, but it's not far from it if it isn't.
Yeah. I this is gonna be a bit of a I don't know. It might be a controversial statement or not, but I feel playing as dwarves are my main faction,
Uh huh.
and I really like playing them. Um, I feel like I can beat any faction in the game except Dark Elves if I
Mm
have a big flat map.
hmm. Mm
The
hmm.
problem is most of the maps that you get played in tournaments are not big flat maps. They're
Mm hmm.
often small, medium sized, or they have a lot of obstacles, which is good for gameplay, but it makes it difficult for a dwarf player.
Mm hmm.
And that's where Gotrek and Fields can come in because they can help you make a smaller army that doesn't need to be super spread out and have these onion lines. It can help you make an army that still works
Mm hmm.
without needing to have this spread out formation.
So that's actually an interesting question. I'll just kind of get into that side of it, and uh, really, I want to understand the old style, like Dowie elite army or small army, were all Thorgrim armies. Really, that is the only Thorgrim and a runesmith, and maybe the Grumbling Guard or stuff like this. So, what kind of elite or I guess smaller dwarf armies are you finding you can make with this trio? Now, you don't have to bring Thorgrim now, I suppose. You can. Is it like a mid-level army? Is it really small like the old Thorgrim armies, or what? What are you finding you can build with Gotrek and Felix in your lineup? One or the other, or both? Like,
I
what's the
mean,
style of the army that you can build with them?
I I don't want to say this is what I'm going to say here is not, I think, set in stone. I think that people will uncover more ways to play, and I will uncover more ways to play as time goes on. But right now, what I've discovered is that having going as wide as possible while still having the hero trio is very effective
Mm-hmm.
because you have so many units that the enemy has to go through, and that gives your hero trio time to mop up whatever they come across on their own. Nothing can stop them unless they get isolated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or you can run a very elite Dowie army with a lot of units that all you know just are tough as nails and forces your enemy to engage in melee. The problem is that there's a lot of factions out there that will make it difficult to do that. If they know that you're going to bring a small elite army every time, they can often just kite you around, bring all
Sure.
ranged troops.
Sure.
So that's where it kind of depends what faction you're facing off, and a little bit of mind games with your opponent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm like, as soon as you said that, I thought greenskins, because greenskins. I mean, if they bring an all doom diver, like 4 doom divers and a real strong army like that, your elite army's pretty much done. But it's like a little mind game, right? If they bring an army like that and you bring something a lot wider, you're going to do really good.
Well, Zach Bisane has been running a lot of elite dwarven infant armies against the greenskins lately, and with a great deal of success.
I have so many of his replays. They're crazy how many different elite armies he runs. But I don't have a whole lot of replays of his with elite armies like that against a Doom Diver build. Because I know.
I watched one specifically on stream where he did lose
Mm-hmm.
with his elite dwarven army against the Doom Diver build, but it was a very close game.
Very
It was
close.
really close, like
Mm-hmm.
down to the wire. So now that you can bring Gotrek and Felix plus Thorgrim, plus an elite Dowie army, that might be enough. It's hard to say.
So we'll get ready to close out here. We'll try to keep the episode short and sweet and to the point. And I'll give you some final thoughts on Gotrek and Felix, and really where if I could, because I know you've played some in some elite tournaments, and I know you've played some very high level competition lately. Could you give me an overall sense of this? I guess the state of the Dowie in competitive right now, in sort of a closing thoughts.
Competitive or like kind of everyday play?
Competitive, I would say. Competitive is that's what I would be looking for, because again, I've seen you play some very, very strong players, so you got that sense of competitive play right at your fingertips right now. So that's what I want to see. Tournament competitive, and even ladders, a whole different ball game. But really, what are the state of the Dowie right now, and Gotrek and Felix as a whole?
As dwarf players get used to Gotrek and Felix, and they continue to adapt their armies, it's going to make competitive players think twice when they go in to fight a Dowie army. Whereas it was before, everything was basically set in stone on what players wanted to bring up against the Dowie. There was a couple approaches that always worked for them, a couple of hard counters, But now that they have Gotrek and Felix, it's going to make competitive players think twice.
So you have a lot more options, or at least one more option.
Yeah, it's an extreme option, but it's another option that they have to prepare for. Because it's an extreme option. You're putting like 3,000 gold or more than that, like 3,500 gold or more.
Well, that's
this hero trio,
and you kind of see that. I mean, like other factions can do that. You can put Malekith on a dragon, and he's right at 3,000 gold with some spells, like right now, right?
Yeah, and that goes into the kind of just the issue of single entity models and healing, and just how strong that is in the game currently. And this is the first time the Dwarves have had access to that, and they kind of get to play the same game that all the other factions get to play for once.
Hooray! So, with that said, what would you say is the state of the Dowie in competitive right now? Are they competitive with everyone? Are they overpowered? Are they underpowered? Are they right where they need to be? And how do they feel for you?
Ooh, now that's a long question.
That's a long question. Do your best. Give the Dowie Nation what they want to hear. Where are the Dwarfs right now in competitive play, based on your experience?
Well, you said that you wanted to keep this short, so I won't go into that topic too much in depth. I'll just say that right now, I would say the future for the Dowie is tentatively hopeful, especially with possible DLC on the horizon. I think Gotrek and Felix will give the Dowie players more options, and it's a great time to start learning Dowie right now because Gotrek and Felix make it really easy.
Yeah, that's true. That's a really good point.
In the non-competitive environment, Gotrek and Felix make and the proper Lord make for some easy wins right now. But in a competitive way, I think that there's still some tentative hope there that things are going to be a little bit better for the Dowie in some of their harder matchups.
Well, right on. Well, that was it was great having you here, Gobble Slayer. I know we've talked about it a number of times, and I'm glad you made the time to come and get onto the show. I appreciate it. You've been fantastic in the community, and I've been loving watching your games, and it's been a pleasure to have you on the Grumbling Dwarf.
Yeah, man. A little loud there. I'll wait a minute. But I just want to say thank you again for having me. It's been a pleasure. And absolutely love your videos and love the community.
Perfect, and we will have you back at some point, and maybe we'll go patch to patch, and we'll kind of keep an update on where you see things with the Dowie, with Gotrek and Felix, and as things roll. So, thanks again, man. You have a good one, and we'll end the episode here.
Bye, everybody.